Hello everyone, welcome to the solution of LeetCode problem 496 named next greater element to 1. In this problem, basically we are given two array which is num1 and num2, where num1 is the subset of num2. We have seen in the first example that num1 has three elements which is 4, 1 and 2, and num2 has four elements which is 1, 3, 4, 2. So all of the element of this num1, 4, 1 and 2 appears in the second array. So we can say that num1 is the subarray of num2, or it is a subset. Now the problem is we are given two arrays, num1 and num2. We have to find the element or the next greater element for each of the value in the first array. Suppose, let's try to understand it simply. For the first element of the first array is 4, right? So at first, we have to check what is the appearance of this element 4 in the second array. So here, the 4 appears here. Now we have to check, is there any greater element after this occurrence of 4, which is greater than 4? So obviously, the next element is 2, which is not greater than 4. So in this case, we have to store -1. Now, for this element 1, we have to check what is the occurrence of the element 1 in the second array. So here, the occurrence of the element 1 in the second array is here. So we have to determine the next greater element, which is greater than 1. So the next element will be 3, 4, and 2. So the immediate greater element will be 3, which is definitely greater than 1. So here, for this element 1, we have to store 3. Now, for this element 2, we have to check what is the appearance of the element 2 in the second array. So here, the element 2 appears here. Now, this is the last element. That means it does not have any other next element. So it is not possible to find the next greater element for this element 2. So here we have to place -1. Now in the second example, for this first element 2, we have to find the occurrence of this first element 2 in the second array. So it appears here. So we can say that the next two element is 3 and 4. So immediate next greater element is 3 for the element 2. So we have to put 3 here. Now for this element 4, we have to find the occurrence of this element 4 into the second array. So here 4 appears here. It does not have any other next element. So here we have to place -1 because it is not possible to find the next greater element. I hope you understood the problem statement as well as the examples. Now let's move on to the constraint. Here, each of the array length can be in between 1 to 1000, and the array element can be in between 0 to 10 to the power 4. And all of the integers in both of the array are unique. And all the integers of the first array also appear in the second array. I hope you understood the constraint. Now let's move on to the algorithm. For the simplicity of the algorithm, we have taken the first example. Here the problem is we have to find the next greater element of all of this first array. Suppose currently we are at this element 4. So we have to find the appearance of 4, which appears here. Now what is the greater element which appears after this element 4? It does not have any other greater element because the only element after the 4 is 2, which is not definitely greater than 4. So in this case, we have to add -1 here. For this element 1, we have to check the appearance of the 1. So 1 appears here. So the next element will be this 3. So here we have seen that the element 3, which is definitely greater than 1. So we have to put the element 3 here. Now for this element 2, we have to check what is the appearance of this element 2. Element 2 appears at the last position, so it does not have any other next greater element. So for this test case, we have to return -1, 3 -1. I hope you understood the problem statement. Now let's move on to the algorithm. Now, the basic intuition behind this algorithm is, if in any of the problem, we have to check where the element appears. In most of the scenarios, those kind of problem can be easily solved using map. Now, according to the convention, we will also use another map here. Now, for each of the element in the second array, we will store the key value pair order into the map. Suppose for this element 1, we will store the index number of the element 1. Now for this element 3, we will store the index number of the element 3, which is 1. Now for this element 4, we will store the index number of 4, which is 2. Now for this element 2, we will store the index number of element 2, which is 3. Now we have to iterate through each of the element in the first array. Suppose currently we are at this first positions where the element is 4. Now we have to check the index number of element 4. It is this. That means the index number of element 4 in the next array is 2. So we have to look after each element after this element 2, whether we can find any element which is greater than 4 or not. Here we can see that after the element 2, there are no possible element which is greater than 4. So we have to add -1 into the resultant array. Now, for this element 1, we have to check what is the index number of the element 1 in the second array. So according to the map, the index number of 1 into the second array is 0. So we have to look after all of the element which appears after the element 0 into the second array if we can find any element which is greater than 1 or not. So here we can see that the element 3, which is definitely greater than 1. So here we have to add the value 3 into the resultant array. Now, for this element 2, we have to check the appearance of the element 2 into the second array. So here we can see that the appearance of the element 2 is the index number 3, which is this. Now we have to check whether is there any element into the right side or into the next side which is greater than 2 or not. But unfortunately, it does not have any other right element. So here we have to add -1 for this element 2. Now, this is the final output. So I am wrapping up the algorithm. At first, we have to iterate all of the element into the second array and store the key value pair order where the key is the value presented in the array and the value is the index number. Now, for each of the element in the first array, we have to check the corresponding positions into this corresponding element into the second array, and we have to run a loop from this respective index to the end of the list. After that, we have to check whether we can find any of the greater element or not. If we can find any of the greater element, we have to append it into the resultant array. Otherwise, we have to append -1 into the resultant array. I hope you understood the algorithm. Now let's move on to the code. In this problem, the code is pretty simple. At first, we are given a function named next greater element, which has two parameters, vector A and vector B. Now here we are using a map and we store the key value pair order of the second element or the second array. Now for each of the element in the first array, we have to run a loop from where it appears in the second array from to the last element. After that, we have to check whether there is any element presented in the second array which is greater than first array or not. If it is, that means we have to put this value to the answer variable. After that, we have to add the answer into the corresponding vector. Finally, we have to return the vector. I hope you understood the code. Now let's move on to the time and space complexity analysis of this program. For this program, the time complexity is big O of n into m, where n is the length of the first array and m is the length of the second array. And the space complexity is also big O of n into m because we are using extra constant memories to solve this problem. Thank you everyone for watching this video. We will get back soon with another LeetCode solution.